My guest on this week's podcast is Marie Adair. Mary is a triathlon coach, fitness trainer, and has completed many triathlons. Mary, good to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Mary, should we just start by talking about what you currently do and where you're based?
Yeah, so I'm a triathlon coach. I am also a certified personal trainer. I'm currently in Pennsylvania in the United States, about an hour and a half outside of Philadelphia, farm country, beautiful country bike, the country roads out here are good for biking and everything. But I also travel quite a bit pre-COVID and once things start to get back to normal. And I travel around to races and I spend a good amount of time kind of documenting and training the course prior to some of the bigger races. So,
shall we just start by kind of going through how you got into fitness and your background and how you changed your lifestyle in terms of getting into fitness?
yeah, absolutely. So I feel like my story is kind of complex, but I'll try to keep it short. I started actually as a veterinary assistant, and after 7 years, kind of realized I didn't want to put my whole heart into the veterinary lifestyle. The technology was evolving, the medicine was evolving so much, and it was just such a hard business to try to associate financially. So I ended up leaving the veterinary industry and went to New York City at 21 years old and went to a private art school for photography. So photography was something I had always taken classes in. I was always just the one with the camera at any family events or whatever. So I went to New York City, and then to try to afford the the high cost of the university that I went to, I started bartending. And that was, the best way to go about it in everybody's eyes. And I got so caught up in the nightlife and in the scene and in New York City and drinking and the glamour of it all. And I did that for about 6 years. And yeah, at that point, I realized I needed a change, and I signed up for my first triathlon. This is my sixth season. So back in 2015, I actually signed up for the triathlon. I did my first one in 2016 and just was hooked.
It's interesting, isn't it? There always seems to be people I speak to. There always seems to be a moment where it's like an inspirational moment where people just suddenly they wake up one morning and think, I need to do something different, or I need to change. And I guess your experience of fitness and getting into triathlon, was that something that was something that gave you the ability to continue to maintain that healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember very specifically a moment I was at the gym working out, and I had the brain endorphins kick in. And I just told myself, like, I don't know what it is, but this has to stay. And I have to keep remembering that I have to keep coming back to this. So having that kind of mental capacity to be like, whatever it is, it's this, and to remember to come back to it was a big factor as well.
Yeah, sure. I can imagine. I noticed that you describe yourself as a health coach. Can you just explain the distinction between that and the triathlon fitness coach?
Absolutely, because so much of it stemmed from mental health, right? I wouldn't have gotten into triathlon had, I think, everything just been smooth and okay and healthy from a mental health perspective in my life. I wouldn't have drank the way I did. I wouldn't have, tried to tune out the way that I did. So the health coaching aspect of it, I can be a personal trainer, I can be a coach, I can write a training plan. But if you don't know why you're here, or you don't know what you're doing, or why you're doing what you're doing, then you're not going to follow a training plan. So I'm far more interested in the relational aspects of how we communicate with each other, how we feel, how we express emotion, and all of that ties into either mental endurance, if you're doing a race, or just getting your weight down. If I've trained clients in the gym, and everybody, if you can't get out of the mental health, you can't get that out of the way, you're not going to show up for anything physical. So, I'm hugely into the mental health aspects of training.
Yeah, I guess that is a common theme that I talk about, but that why factor, understanding why someone wants to do something or why someone has certain fitness objectives is kind of key. And that's I guess is at the center of what you do in terms of when you work with your clients, you're trying to understand, that big association with why do you want to change your lifestyle? Why do you want to train for a triathlon? Do you see the importance of who you're coaching and their ability to be coached, as opposed to just setting a training plan?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on the person. It depends on really what their hangups are, what their personality type is, the way that they listen. I mean, the people that I work with, they have to be coachable. They have to be, they can't be fighting me about everything. Like, obviously, they want to question, I want to help them through that, but they have to be willing to show up. And that for a lot of people takes time. I don't think we've really been taught how to ask for help. I don't think we've really been taught that we are worthy of going after the things that we should go after, right? And how to make that happen, and how to find the information to make it happen. So everybody has a starting place, and it's really understanding what the progression looks like for that person, because we can't change overnight. It has to be a simple progression. So, working on 2 or 3 little things or little habits every day, instead of, to change who you are over time, instead of just boom and it's overwhelming and then you feel like you fail and then you quit. So I definitely think a good coach needs to kind of understand what they're working with and how to progress.
Just kind of pulling that kind of towards your coaching, that whole kind of concept of why, and having those that you coach understand themselves why they're training. Because often I think I've certainly found that often you train, but you don't understand why you're doing the training you're doing. Do you find that you have to, as part of your coaching, do you find yourself having to explain that as at an early stage, and is it something that you have a process for in terms of trying to make sure that those athletes understand and therefore can make intuitive decisions about how they progress their training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw it more so in the gym, like in the person, and when I was personal training one-on-one. Flexibility is a big one.
Yeah.
There are a lot of mechanics, and people don't really want to stretch or don't know why they should. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of like the mechanics of it that we talk about. Um, but as far as, I mean, no, I mean, if people are open to kind of going with the training plan, we'll obviously have that conversation if they have questions. But no, I haven't come across too much. It's really just motivation is the biggest factor that I've seen. People think they have to psych themselves up to get on the bike, or they think they have to get ready to and be motivated and want to do it to be on it, and that's really not the way that our brains work.
I think it's a really important point. I think I'm guilty of it myself when I train. Is I overthink things, and actually once I'm out there, usually I'm running. Once I'm out and actually doing the run, I'm fine, and there's no turning back. But it is hard. I mean, especially on endurance. So you yourself have done a lot of endurance triathlons. the volume of training you have to do, and kind of I think if you look at your training plan and think about the total amount of training you have to do in a week, you're bound to overthink.
Right.
I think you have to be, you have to be in those sessions. Your head needs to be in that one session each time. Of course, you have to think about what it is that you're going to need to do the next day, and you don't want to impact your training plan by doing something that's going to impact that. But that whole ability to kind of bring it into little packages and just do those individually without overthinking the whole concept of your training plan.
Yeah. There's an author, his name is David Allen. He wrote a book called Getting Things Done. And his whole point about the way that the brain works and not overthinking everything, but actually staying present in the moment, in what you're doing, and not shifting, from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, which we're really good at, right? Our attention spans are less than a goldfish at this point. Right. So, and I always come back to meditation. I think meditation can help so many things. But if you're thinking about the past, you're actually in depression. And if you're thinking about the future, you're in anxiety. And if you're thinking about the present, then you're grounded and you're centered and you're controlled and you're able to just focus on what's in front of you. So I tell my clients, schedule it out. We do a breakdown of every day of the week from what has to happen. And, when you go on your run or when you go into the gym or whatever, that is your time to show up fully to that moment. And maybe it helps you to think about other things, but not in a way that is going to be distracting to you showing up fully in the moment. So the more we can practice that, and I know it's even harder, like trying to lift weight, if we're doing like a bicep curl, just counting to 15 sometimes can be like so much.
Yeah.
But the more that we can stay and practice staying present in the moment, the better we'll be all around. And actually, it really helps with our relationship as well, because we'll be fully present when we have a conversation with somebody instead of like checking our phone. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. Like you're not actually having a real connection with the person that's right in front of you if you're thinking about other things.
Very good. Just turning to kind of your own kind of race experience and the endurance events that you completed. Should we just talk about kind of some highlights of the races that you've taken part in and some of the experiences you've had, and how that's helped you to kind of get to where you've got to as a coach?
I did my first triathlon in New York City. So I trained in New York City and in that water. And I did my first race in the Hudson. Um, so I kind of have this idea, and this came back to when I was learning how to drive. I learned on a minivan, because if you learn in a bigger vehicle, right, or in tougher conditions, then when it's not a tough condition, you can kind of, it's easier. It gets easier instead of getting harder. So training in New York City water, where I really could barely see my hands in front of me, that was it. Once I got to doing my first Ironman in Cozumel, the water was, 99% clarity, beautiful reef. Like it made the day so much better. Where if vice versa, it would have been more difficult to adapt to not being able to see anything in front of me. I've had a lot of different experiences with races, but it really comes down to like the camaraderie of the day, the sportsmanship of the day. I did a half Ironman where it rains and we were in New Jersey, and there were so many pop tubes on the bike that day, and it was like the bike support could not handle it. Like most of the people don't know how to change their own tube.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like that's the number one piece of advice I would give anybody, is learn how to do it. Learn how to do it under pressure, because you're not going to learn how to do it on race day. So learn how to change your tube. But, and I've given like my last tube to another racer and I still had 28 miles to do or whatever. It was like if I probably screwed, but I didn't and it was fine. But the sportsmanship of the sport itself has been incredible. And just seeing everybody kind of out there doing it all together and the support in the community was really something I haven't seen anywhere else. It's really great.
And you had an incident, didn't you, on one of your Ironman races, which wasn't the greatest preparation for the race, but you managed to get through it. Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, I did. So I did my first Ironman in Cozumel, Mexico, and I woke up totally ready. I was in the best mood. Nutrition was on point. I was actually hungry that morning, like it was fine. And this was in Mexico. I lived about a mile from transition area. So you go to transition area first, and then you get on a shuttle, and they shuttle you up to swim because it's a point to point. So they'll shuttle you up to the swim start, but you check on your bike that morning. I had so many tasks to do. I had to get my numbers on my arm. I had to put, I had shoes that I had to put with my bike. I had like these cooling sleeves that I had with my arms, for my arms to put on the bike. And I am right outside of transition area across the street. I have a headlamp on. I think it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, so it's dark. And I hear a noise behind me and I am on the ground. And I had gotten hit by a motorcycle who drove up behind me, who was on the shoulder lane, and it was right outside of transition area. So I was actually wearing a backpack on this arm. So the loose strap from that backpack caught the handlebars. So I spun and went down, hit the head, and hit my head on the ground and was dragged. So this was before my first Ironman, all the training I had done, and I was devastated. I didn't know what was going on. I was completely in shock. My mind, my body was completely in shock. And I still had a number of things to complete that morning. So it was really tough. He took off. The guy who hit me took off. And I just pretty much cried for the next hour and a half while still trying to calm myself down, trying to decide whether I was okay or not. I could not find paramedics. I was told they'd be at the swim start. I couldn't find them. I don't know if that's because they weren't there or just because I was a mess. But I ended up saying I'm just going to take the day really easy, really slowly. And I got in the water and I started my Ironman. And then about 10 minutes into the swim, a man next to me had a cardiac arrest. And we had to wave, me and another girl and probably a couple other people waved rescue boats over. And it was just, that's how I started the day. So it was really intense, but I had to understand that both of these incidences were rare in their own, and this was not going to dictate the rest of my day. So I had to kind of have the ability to put everything in perspective individually and keep going. And it was tough. It was a tough race because I did have whiplash in my arms and shoulders. So being an arrow on the bike for as long as it was tough, and it was okay. But then my right hip was really hurting a lot on the run. And I had road rash. That was only a minor part of it that was stinging a little bit, but the whiplash in my neck and shoulders from it was the most difficult part on the bike.
It's amazing you actually continued, because I think most people would have said to themselves that that's I'm injured, I'm not gonna persevere. But yeah, that must have taken a lot of kind of mental attitude. And
I just wanted my race, and I kept saying that. I was like, I just want to do my race. I just want to do my race. I was more upset that I might have not, like, to make it to swim start and then not start.
Just in terms of people that are perhaps new to triathlon, new to endurance athletics, is there any tips that you can give them just in terms of important factors that they should consider in preparing for training, that you perhaps wished you had known when you started?
Yeah, I'm sure there's so much. When it comes to preparing for training, I mean, you can't go wrong with well-fitted equipment. I like everybody to go to a shoe store and have their shoes specifically fit for them. I want everybody to have a bike fit before they do a lot of training. Like if they're training for a half or for an Ironman, I just don't hurt yourself because it doesn't fit properly. The biggest piece of advice, I guess there are a couple, absolutely no protein for like 3 hours before you work out. Our bodies cannot digest it while we are working out, and it then makes us nauseous. So I had a bunch of clients in the gym that actually would eat like either a cheeseburger or have some kind of protein meal because you should eat before you work out so you keep your blood sugar higher, because that will make your blood sugar crash working out well. But they would then get very nauseous
Mm.
because they had protein prior to working out. So I do not eat any protein before, but always after.
Yeah,
Um,
and high carbs before.
yeah, high carbs and high sugar. So I eat a lot of like waffles and fruit are kind of like my breakfast. And then I go for my run or whatever. And then for lunch, more carbohydrate. And then I can have some protein if I'm done working out for the day. But I give it about 3 hours between protein and anything higher impact.
Nutrition seems to be a topic that most people I speak to don't they need the most help with. And I think it's one of these areas that because our bodies, everyone's different, everyone's energy systems work in different ways, and your ability to process the nutrition that you take for those endurance events is different. It's one of these things that actually I find you're best off actually experimenting and trying to work it out for yourself. Nutritionists can help. I think they play a really vital role, but they're never going to be able to really fine tune what it is that you need in order to keep your fuel systems working, especially on, significant endurance events, the kind of 4 hours in the bike or, half marathon kind of distance.
I definitely think there are a lot of guidelines that will help everybody, as far as what your own sensitivities are. Obviously, you should know that and play around with that. What upsets your stomach, what doesn't. So certain gels or certain tablets, electrolyte tablets might upset your stomach. They might not. So things like that you should definitely be aware of. Nothing new on race day ever. And actually try it out in your own training so that you're not just reliant, or bring your own stuff so you're not just reliant to trying something new, whatever is available that day on the course. I do find that they're pretty consistent across the board with like Gatorade and all the, depending on what's available. But I would definitely try all that out, and nothing new on race day. Caffeine intake, I think, is a big one because if you take too much of it, then you got to be running to the bathroom, and that's a whole thing. So, how
Yeah.
much is too much? When do you need it? And also, can carbohydrate just kind of bring you back, and where maybe you think you need more caffeine and you really just need more carbohydrate, and that'll be enough. So I think people tend to supplement the caffeine for the carbohydrate. But also, how frequently do you eat? What is your metabolism like? Some people can go for 2 hours in a swim if they needed to, or do a longer swim event, and not need to eat. That is not my case. I actually try to bring a gel with me while I'm out training. Um, but it's also I'm also kind of designed the way that I eat every day to be like that. So I eat 4 to 6 meals a day that tend to be smaller, and I stay in the low glycemic index, which is what I teach and what I tell my clients that they should try to do if they can. I know it's tough, you know, with everybody's work schedule, but they should try to do it if they can, because this keeps our blood sugar at a
Yeah, I
consistent
agree.
instead of
Up and
crashing,
down.
yeah, up and down.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really, really important, especially if you're doing multiple training, perhaps morning and evening, kind of keeping those levels topped up is really, really important.
Yeah,
And
so so many.
timing is everything on with nutrition, I find. And you can only really work that out yourself, but timing is everything, is knowing exactly when to take those carbs, either before or during a session.
It doesn't have to be, uh, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, I think the apps are a good rule of thumb for what you eat on a regular basis. So you can have an idea of, okay, this might be like 300 calories, this salad or whatever. So you can have a general idea of where you are throughout the day. And then, I do like to calculate like basal metabolic rate, and then how much you're actually burning when you work out, because we do want to make sure that you're not emaciated and that you're not burning too many. Um, but at the same time, like, how do you feel is the biggest aspect of it. Do you feel like you need to eat more? Do you feel like you need to eat more sugar after a run? Go have whatever, go have a candy bar, whatever it is. Go have carbohydrate, go replenish those stores, those carbohydrate stores. Um, so intuitive eating is really the way I want to go with everybody, whether they're training or not. They're training for a sport or just trying to get through. Like, how do you feel? But also, it comes back to not rushing while eating, right?
Yeah,
Not eating in your car on the way to work because you got up late and you're rushing. Like, I want everybody to take a moment and be present while
yeah, I
they
agree.
food and understand how the food is nourishing them for the next few hours of their day, and then what the next meal is going to add on to that. And I mean, it's not difficult. I think some people just need a little education about it.
I agree. I agree. I think that whole kind of Mediterranean approach to actually taking a lunch break is something we just don't do. I think probably the pandemic's helped with that, being at home. I certainly take myself away from the desk and eat in the kitchen, which if I'd been in the office, I wouldn't have done. I would have probably ate at my desk and between meetings. But yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, yeah,
S-
absolutely.
Um, I'm interested to hear what your objectives and what you're working on and what you're planning to do over the next few months as we come out of lockdown.
Yeah, so I've spent, my whole life basically questioning, why do I feel the ways that I do? What is this mental health about? And just trying to find solutions to things. I think I kicked the clock in and clock out mentality when it comes to learning relatively early. I always wanted to, go take on the world and go find all the answers. And so I have taken my whole life, but my last 10 years of really exploring, and nutrition and the triathlon training has made so much sense when it comes to just the structure of our week, the structure of our day, the organization that goes into, you can do it all. People like to tell you you can't do it all. I'm a photographer, I'm a veterinary assistant, and assist spay and neuter clinics when I travel around the world. I'm a personal trainer, I'm a triathlon coach, I'm learning guitar, I'm doing all these different, you can do it all. And I don't want anybody to like be influenced by like, oh, then you're not good at any of it, or whatever the
Mm.
stigma is. There's plenty of room, there's plenty of time, if you can just be structured enough to really go after it all. And I want people to be empowered to go after it all. But that starts in the psychology of our own brain, that starts in not rushing to do things and then guilting ourselves when we've done too much. That starts with not overcommitting. That starts with learning what boundaries are so that we can tell people, here's how much I can give you while still honoring me. So there's a lot of different mental health aspects that go into it, and I'm putting them all into kind of an online platform. And the human experience is so complex. And I have so much grace for that. So I really want to help people understand that, they're not a failure, that it's not all or nothing, that little progressions add up so much. And that's really nothing about this life is linear. Losing weight is not linear. Learning, growing, it's not linear. It's not progressive. I don't even think training is linear.
Just looping back to what you said at the start around mental health, I think actually mental health is often the bit that needs to be fixed, not the actual treatment for the cause. So, for example, if you're overweight and you have a lifestyle issue, just in terms of, perhaps a relationship with food that is causing you to be overweight, it's, a doctor telling you that here's a diet sheet, here's exactly what you need to eat, isn't the answer, in my opinion. The answer is actually addressing the mental aspect of why am I eating more food than I actually need. And once you unlock that, that's when the treatment will work. But until you do that, you will always have that kind of yo-yo effect. I've had the same problem. I came from kind of being very overweight and yo-yoing my weight because I went through various diets, faddy diets that said, you will do this and you will do that, and you'll drink milkshakes, all week.
Mhm.
But I would always revert back to that unhealthy relationship with food. And, I think the same thing can be applied to everything we do. If you want something badly, you want to achieve objectives, you want to, do an Ironman, the way in which you go about it comes from your mental attitude towards it, not how you're going to get through a 4-hour bike on Zwift and how many times you do that.
Yeah, I talk a lot in this program about a mental real estate. Mental real estate is what I call it. Now, apparently, that means something else somewhere else, I guess, in the actual real estate world. But when we hang on to issues, when we hang on to problems or conflict, or not being able to express ourselves the way we want, when we try to stuff all that down, we actually hang on to the we hang on to materialistic things. We hang on to items. We grow attachments to items. We hang on to weight, right? We hang on to more than we need to, and it shows. It shows in our bodies. It shows in the way we eat. But yeah, it comes back to, this idea of, do you feel fulfilled with what you do in your daily life, or do you come home and, kind of disassociate with what you've done all day? And then how do you disassociate? A lot of people watch the news, a lot of people watch TV, people go shopping, people, mine was alcohol. I am the first to say that, I would drink about it. And so how do we get to a place where we can actually sit in the experience of, and that's a very kind of my generalized version of what an addiction is. An addiction does not have to be a full-blown chemical issue that ruins the whole family. It's whatever you turn to not sit with your feeling.
I agree. And as I said, I think that's exactly how you address the objective that you're trying to aim for, is by having the right mental attitude towards it. So that's really, really interesting. So I will drop in the description on this podcast details about how to contact you. And I really look forward to seeing your program. And so thank you, Mary, for joining the podcast today. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you as well. It's been great. Thanks.